Hello there, Sir from 17 once again. This is my Onimusha Dawn of Dreams, no damage, hard run. This is mission or stage 12, and it's entitled Mitsunari's Pride. There are two parts to this mission, and my chair keeps sinking, so you're going to hear me adjust it a lot, and it's really fucking me off, so I do apologise in advance for that. There are certain parts of this game where the level design is perhaps not as great as it is in other places, and this is one of those moments because we're going to be controlling an elevator that can only be, truly used by Roberto because he opens specific doors, and from that we're going to be doing an environmental puzzle of destroying parts of a machine. And the first time I did this particular sequence, it took quite a long time because I had no idea what I was doing, and obviously, level design such as this is a sign of the times. It's a sign of these kind of games in that time where puzzles were a little bit more eclectic and a little bit less specific and very formulaic in an almost unconventional way, where there's a certain pattern on how you're meant to solve them, but the pattern itself is so convoluted that it doesn't really have that elegant level design that you can see in masterfully puzzled games. For instance, like Portal is probably a good example. When you first play Portal, it's confusing, it's weird, it makes no sense. The second time you play it, because you understand how it works, it's just this brilliantly nuanced, really clever game design that is truly appreciated when you fully understand it and can grasp it. And having done this 3 times, this level, I understand it and I still don't think it's good. But you have to do it twice, because you come back through this area, they reuse this particular level, and it's probably worse the second time you come through, because it makes even less sense what they want you to do. As I'm showing you my skillful twisty box puzzle stuff here, which, if this was the extent of the puzzles in this game, I'll probably enjoy it a lot more, because the environmental stuff, when it's done well, is great. When it's not done well, it's just a little bit tedious. So the first encounter we see here is a couple of enemies spawning. One of them is an archer. The archers are the only real threat here. The gold and black standard Genma samurais. They're far too passive when they get up close. At a distance, they're the most dangerous, even though they don't have really the range, but they can attack and hit you when you perhaps don't think they can stretch quite that far, so you need to be aware of it. But remember this door, because it's important, because what's going to happen is when we go through several other rooms, we will get a purple amulet, a purple sigil or whatever it is, and then we have to come back to that one, open it, which will then give us a sigil for a different coloured door that we've seen while we were trying to find that one. And it's just that back and forth kind of level design that takes a while. This is a pretty long level. But that door there, you'll notice how it was wooden. That means that you don't need Roberto to open it. Any of the metal doors you cannot open unless he does it, which limits your ability to use the other team members. And there are a few treasures in this particular section that you can get by playing as Huhatsu, and one of them I believe if you get by playing as Jubei, but I'm not going to stray too far from the path. There's the green crest right there. That spawns in an axe guy. There are 2 varieties of axe players. The first one just does that. The second one does a 2-hitter like he did just then. And you can tell the difference. I think the original one is red, and I think the tougher version is brown. So, changing those colour presets to increase the difficulty on an enemy and giving them some new animations is by no means new, but it is something that this game implements a lot. And I was checking the comments the other day. A lot of people, mentioning titles they'd like me to cover with these emulators. It's a little bit unrealistic, guys, because the thing that I've learnt by playing on emulators is just because you can run one game does not mean you can run all games. And regardless of how powerful your machine is, some of them just hardware hogs, some of them just don't work that well. There's patches for some, there aren't patches for others. There's some games that get a lot of attention on the forums which allow you to really understand how to fix the performance issues, and others just don't. So There's no use getting all super excited and requesting projects and things, because chances are that game will not run well on my machine, because it's just how it happens. And I have literally tried about 8 other titles that I've been wanting to play, and none of them run at a solid frame rate, so thus I just will not play them. You know, I don't see any point in suffering a sub 30 frame rate on a game that I have the original behind me for the PS2, which runs a more consistent performance rate than that. And the drawback there is, when you play those old PS2 games, is obviously they look like blurry shit because technology's advanced. We're now in a high definition era. We'll probably be moving into the 4K era in a few years. Might even get to 3D when, you know, it doesn't make people sick and you don't have to wear stupid glasses or sit with your head in a specific position. But looking back at those old titles is so difficult to do, because they just... Don't get me wrong, there's nothing to do with the games. The games and the graphics are a testament to what they did with the hardware. But just the technology of displays back then, it hurts your eyes. It gives you eye strain. It makes you wonder how you ever put up with it. But at the time, you had no frame of reference. You just kind of did. And it's really tough when you go from playing, you know, on a big TV that's nice and high definition, that's using a HDMI to make it pop, and then you go back to, you know, shitty SCART leads, and it's really rough. So the emulator is a fantastic way of, you know, making those games super playable, and they don't hurt your eyes. But you just can't get what you want. Like, there's a game for an anime called Samurai Champloo, and the game itself seems kind of interesting. You know, it's an actiony game. It's more Dynasty Warriors than Devil May Cry, which is a bit of a shame, but it's still interesting and it runs perfectly. Didn't have to change any settings. It ran wonderfully. But then I got a game called Blood Will Tell, which is an action game which I think features nothing but boss fights. I was really excited to play it, and it ran at about 7 frames. You know, I couldn't see the picture. All I could hear was voice acting. The frame rate looked like dog shit. You know, it was just one big artifact screen, and that's a game that came out before the other one. So it kind of baffles you on performance and how this exactly works. And it's super sad because I got Beautiful Joe, and Beautiful Joe was perfect until the gameplay started, and then the frame rate tanked. And I think I can change some native controls on the visuals or the resolution that will help the frame rate on that game. But it just sucks that I can't play it on the same settings I'm playing this, when, you know, for all intents and purposes, this to me looks like a more, you know, hardware intensive game, because it's some of the last games released on the PS2 in the grand scheme of things, not speaking of Japan, who are still releasing games for it. And it looks damn good. And it's just frustrating that it isn't a ubiquitous thing where everything's the same and everything works, everything is great. And I just attempted to play Okami, because I've never played it before, and it's a Clover game, and everybody calls it like the Zelda of PlayStation, and I can get that game to run on native, and admittedly it doesn't look like it does at 3 times native or on custom resolution, but the frame rate is solid at 60 and it never dips. And it still looks really good, so I'm going to be able to play that game, and if I like it, which I think I will because so far it seems really cool, minus the 17 minutes of unskippable bullshit at the start and that boring ass story, you know, it might be something that features on the channel because it works, and I just wish that, you know, everything did. Because there's so many games I haven't played that I know will probably be fantastic, that will be gems from people's childhoods, and the emulator is this super optimistic moment of, you know, I'm going to be able to play this game, this is amazing, I can't wait. And then when it runs, and it, you know, it's sub 30 frames per second, the screen's all artifacted because of, you know, emulation problems, it makes me wish the technology for emulation was a little bit more advanced. You know, it makes me wish that it was endorsed as opposed to being looked at as this illegal thing. You know, because obviously it's a form of piracy, and although the people doing it, you know, are doing it out of the nostalgia and the lust to keep these games alive, they will still be frowned upon by the publishers, and I'm not too sure about developers, because I do think, you know, deep in the heart of hearts of developers, they just want their game to be played and enjoyed, and they want to see, you know, to share that experience that they helped create. And it does suck that they don't get the full money that they deserve. But there are some games you just can't get anymore. Like, you know, trying to look for God Hand in physical format in the shops around where I live. You know, good luck with that. You're not going to find it. And luckily enough, you can get the PS2 Classic or PSN or whatever they call it. But there are a ton of games that people love that don't have that treatment. And these aren't high definition. You know, you can use the smoothening features and all that kind of stuff that the PlayStation 3 provides, but they're never going to look as good as, you know, an emulated game using PC hardware which runs really well. And as you can see here, we've got the final key. All we need to do now is make it back to that locked door that we've passed earlier on, and that's the end of this crazy level design. I do apologise that I wasn't speaking here, guys, but this is one of those things where it's just, you know, watch where I go, emulate it if you're struggling. It's just not a very fun puzzle. It's an interesting idea, it's too arbitrary for my liking. It doesn't flow enough. And I'm sure there's a speedrunner somewhere that does it perfectly and makes it flow, but you shouldn't have to play a game a million times to get that. You shouldn't have to, you know, learn a really specific path for the puzzle to flow. The puzzle should flow just sheerly on the way that you work it out. And some of them in this game do, which is why moments like this really stand out. I've been having plans anyhow to try and do more channel updates, to make it a bit more of a frequent thing, to let people understand, you know, what's happening with the channel, because I get a lot of comments from people who just don't really understand, you know, how the channel works, what to expect, those kind of expectations. And I think the majority of it stems from the fact that the new people. I'm getting quite a lot of subscribers in the grand scheme of my channel, not in the grand scheme of somebody, you know, like PewDiePie, who... That dude, just... Guy's a wizard. I have no idea why, but there it is. And the new people, you know, they haven't been here, they haven't experienced it, so... I think I'm going to try and increase the tempo on updates, just to keep people informed on what's happening. And I know it won't get rid of a lot of the comments, which are just identical comments that I've been getting for the entire time I've been on YouTube, but it might help those people get their answers without having to rely on asking me questions, which I don't mind people asking me questions, but when it's a question I've answered 1,000 times, it's hard to stay optimistic then, folks. It really is. So a lot of the times, they're the type of comments that I ignore. Just be careful. This is an absolute nightmare, this room. The dudes throwing those discs are the douchiest enemy on this game, because they don't fight, they just cower away and throw shit at you. It's really like temper testing. It's not a fun design aspect. But thank you very much for watching. The second part of this video is going to feature that boss fight I mentioned was really tricky, and hopefully you're going to be able to see the timing on the Isen that I use against him, because if you don't, it's a really long fight, even with a really good weapon, which makes zero sense. No words, but thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.